Harp on Sports, The Bar, podcast, media, audio, and radio network. What do we have in store for you on this edition of the program? It's game week. Yep, Florida State Tech coming up this weekend, right? So now that we are less than a week away, got to tell you what we think Florida State, and Miami are going to do this year. Also going to lay out the conference championship games, a little preseason primer, and, later on in the week, we'll go through and individually look at individual awards and things of that nature. But got to get the big three done today. Game week, hard to believe. So we've got that. Also, as I mentioned, going to look at the conference championship games with realignment. A little bit different now. Some changes. And we here like three newcomers to make it to their conference championship game. There's newcomers in all four conferences. So what three newcomers do we like to make it to their conference championship game? 3 of 8. So we'll look at that as well. Also, we look back on certain things, and since we did this podcast last, Junior Caminero up for the Rays. He's got a week of games under his belt, and what we make. Also, Kevin Cash's 800th win as manager for the Rays. So with 40 games to go now, 39 games to go in the regular season. They set a game above 500. They've stayed right at or above 500 since the trading deadline 3 weeks ago. Junior Caminero, future, the Rays just kind of there. But they're doing what they need to do final 2 months of the year. So we'll dive into that as well. All right, Harp on Sports, The Bar, podcast, media, audio, radio network. Follow, share, like, subscribe at Harp on Sports Twitter, at Harp on Sports Instagram, Harp on Sports Auditory Route, Buzzsprout, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Harp on Sports, The Bar Facebook page, YouTube channel, and of course, harponsports.com. I want to start off with 3 schools in the state since Florida State's up first. Might as well start with the Noles. Look, where we are now with Mike Norvell's in his 5th year, that's hard to believe at the helm. 20, 21, 22, 23. It's hard to believe. But he's there. Turned it around. Now, did they get smoked in their bowl game? Yes, they did. They did. Jordan Travis, of course, injured. Enter DJ Hungalele. And I look at what they have and the quarterback position and talent and what he's done there. Nice job that Mike Norvell has done. And you look at their schedule's rough. Florida State's schedule's rough. It is. Important that they win in Ireland in week 0 here, because if not, you start to look at some games on this schedule. There's games in there that you wouldn't think are tricky that are at SMU. They're home to Clemson, but they have to go to Duke, to Miami, to Notre Dame. Florida State's got their hands full this year, schedule-wise. Their schedule's a nightmare. It is. Florida has the toughest of the 3. Miami schedule's weak, with the exception of having to start the year at Florida. But you look at what Florida State has, it's a tough road. Tough road for the Noles this year. So I was going through and looking at it, and, you get a quarterback that transferred, went out west, right? And at Oregon State, he had a decent year, not great, but an okay year. And, at Clemson, it didn't really work out for him. Lost his job. DJ's big claim to fame is what? Going into South Bend during a COVID year and having a monster night as a freshman. Since then, some nice nights, but nothing that would lead you to believe, okay, here comes the next Heisman. I thought with Trevor Lawrence, that would be the passing of the baton. It just hasn't worked out. But you look at quarterbacks. Cam Ward, we're going to get to Miami coming up. But what he's done, what he did at Washington State, this state's got good quarterbacks. Graham Mertz is a good quarterback. Not great, not Heisman. No, these guys aren't Heisman guys, but they're good, solid quarterbacks. So I look at Florida State and the talent that they have returning, 7 on offense, 7 on defense. They return a decent amount of guys. They lose some big names, lose a lot of talent, but Mike Norvell's done a nice job there. And schedule-wise, it's rough. It's pretty brutal. But when I look at it and where they are, in the top 10, all the talent that they have, they'll take a step back. But, the people thinking that they're going to take a gigantic step back, no, they're not. I got Florida State going 9-3. I've got Florida State going 9-3. And, depending on the weather in South Bend, you look at a game like the Miami-Florida State game is going to be fascinating for so many reasons. The fact that you're going to have a state championship here again this year with all three of these teams playing each other is pretty cool as well. So, again, I look at the Noles. I look at what they have with DJ. I think it's a 9-3 football team. College football playoff? Probably not. I do not have Florida State going to the Big 12 or to the ACC championship game. I'll get to that coming up. From that to this, Miami, Mario Cristobal. Of course, he leaves Oregon, and Oregon all of a sudden has a monster year last year with Bo Nix. They knock on the door going to the college football playoff. Miami, he just hasn't been able to get his alma mater back on track. Now he gets another year under his belt. He gets a quarterback in Cam Ward that comes from Washington State. So he's got a nice set of talent down there. In Miami's schedule, looking at it, Now look, at Florida to start the year, high risk, high reward. I look at what else they have on the docket and, going to Georgia Tech, going to Syracuse, okay, at Cal, at Louisville. They've got games in there that are rough, but not, that's their road schedule. Not, oh my God, the world's going to end. And the fact that they get to host Florida State as well, that's one of those to me that swings the pendulum one way or another. The winner of that Florida State-Miami game will go 9-3. The loser will probably go 8-4. But you look at quarterbacks in this conference, Cam Ward, DJ, Graham Mertz are in this state. It's a pretty good set. Weaponry is going to be the question at Miami. And Mario Cristobal's done a pretty nice job of bringing talent in there. Look, that roster now has been reloaded, but it's this constant thing at Miami, right? With the exception of the 1 year that Tommy Tuberville had. Tommy Tuberville, good gracious, Seth. With the 1 year that Mark Richt had, it's kind of been bare bones there. It's like, okay, this is an 8-4 football team. And it's been an 8-4 football team predominantly with the exception of the 1 year for about 15 years now, 16 years, 20 years now. The 8-4 has been the ceiling. And I think there's where you are again. Mario Cristobal can go 8-4 in Miami this year. Oh, okay. Now, if they go 8-4 and lose to Florida and lose to Florida State, then all of a sudden you're like, okay, they lost both of those games, but they were able to navigate everything else. All right. So, again, I said 9-3 Florida State. I'm going to say Miami 8-4 for Mario Cristobal. They have been able to coalesce some talent, and their schedule comes to them. With the Florida Gators, look, I wrote down 4-1. If they don't start off 4-1, they're not going to finish above 500. They're not, because if they start off 3-2, and then they're at Tennessee, they get Kentucky at home, but then Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, Florida State. At Tennessee, Kentucky at home, Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, Florida State. Those 7 games. If you go 4-3 somehow, if you go 4-3 somehow, some way, and you start off 3-2, that gets you to 7-5. That's a damn miracle to get there. It's just death at the end of the year. It's too much for any team to handle. So when you start off with Miami. Then you have Samford. Then you get what? The A&Ms of the world. Mississippi State. Central Florida. You've got winnable games out of the gate. You got first-year head coaches. You're at home. The game at Mississippi State can be a little bit tricky. That one could sneak up on you, but Central Florida at home, Samford at home, Miami. The first 5 games come to you. Florida should go 4-1 in those first 5 games and then buckle up. Then you got to find a way, you if you can somehow beat Ole Miss at home, beat Kentucky at home, you got to win your home games here. So with Graham Mertz and Billy Napier's done a nice job of rebuilding this thing, and if they can get to 4-1, then they can have a little confidence, a little swagger. But those wins, those Missouris and the Vandys aren't the South Carolinas. Those checks aren't there anymore. If you had the SEC East schedule, and you had your non-con with Samford, or your non-con with Samford and Florida State, Miami. If you had that Central Florida, if you had your non-con with that, then you're talking 7-5, 8-4. But when you're substituting Ole Miss for Texas, and you're substituting, Ole Miss comes in for South Carolina, Texas comes in for Vanderbilt. I mean, it's tough sledding. So I think Florida goes 6-6. I've got Florida 6-6 football team. I've got Florida State 9-3 football team, and I've got Miami 8-4 football team. And again, going through each game, loss, win. No, I think it's imperative for Florida to start off 4-1. If they start off 3-2, they're not going to finish above 500. If they're 3-2 going into that Tennessee game, then all of a sudden you have to win at Tennessee. And look, this team's always finds a way to win the game that they have no business winning. Look, they looked good against South Carolina on the road last year, but South Carolina, the wheels came off. They looked good against Tennessee at home. They looked terrible against Arkansas at home. Looked good for a half against Florida State at home. So, again, Florida 6-6, Florida State 9-3, Miami 8-4. So that's what I think those schools do. None of them come close to sniffing their conference championship game, though. None of them. And I was going through and looking at this. I have 3 new teams in their conference going to their conference championship game. In the Big 12, I've got Oklahoma State taking on Utah. Riesling's back, quarterback Utah. Kyle Whittingham. Look, they went to the Pac-12 championship game 2 years ago. Beat USC. This team, a little bit injury bug bitten last year, but I mean, good gracious. The level at which Oregon and Washington played last year, just you weren't going to catch them. You just weren't. So I look at Oregon State with Texas gone and with Oklahoma gone. I don't think Oklahoma would have had a tough time winning this, but I think you get Utah and Oklahoma State. The ACC, I've got North Carolina and Clemson. Clemson's schedule comes back to them a little bit this year. Dabo, still a ton of talent there. He's had a bad year. They got off to a slow start last year, finished strong. All right, be able to beat Notre Dame when they go 9-4 when it was all said and done for Clemson. So they built some momentum as the season went on. And that's one of those things, they'll bounce back. So I got Clemson and North Carolina. In the Big Ten, here's where it starts to get a little bit interesting. I've got Oregon and Ohio State. Michigan, a new coach. James Franklin at Penn State's also they're right there. You look at some of the schedules here. Oh, my gosh. Oregon's flush with talent, though. Oregon, probably the second most talented team in the conference. Behind Ohio State. Maybe more talented. It's close. And, you're going to have USC, Penn State all right there. Michigan, new coach with the Harbaugh gone there. They'll take a step back a little bit here. And I just don't know what you're going to get out of Washington. You got a new coach at Washington. Laying this out, I think you're going to have Ohio State and Oregon. So think about this. New team, Utah, Big 12, conference championship game. The ACC is the only conference that I have that I only have a newcomer, because the newcomers aren't strong enough to stick their nose in there. The Cals, the Stanfords, they're just not. They're not going to get in there. The SMUs. The SEC, I've got Ole Miss and Texas. Okay. Texas plays Georgia. And you look at Ole Miss's schedule and where they find themselves and where Georgia has to go. Georgia's loaded. There's no doubt that Georgia's loaded. But I think you could have two 11-1 teams at the end of the year duking it out for this sucker. Georgia's loaded, yeah, but they have to play Texas. And I was thinking, okay, well, maybe it's Texas, Georgia. Well, they play each other. And Lane Kiffin, the offense that they have, where they're hosting teams, that their home schedule, their home slate, I think they finally bust through. And then, of these teams, where it starts to get interesting is, what do you do to a team? Think about this. What do you do to a team? Let's say you have Ole Miss there that's 11-1, and Ole Miss loses. Then you could have Alabama sitting there at 10-2, Georgia sitting there at 10-2, Texas sitting there at 12-0 or 13-0. Then all of a sudden it's like, okay, what do we start to do here? It's going to be interesting to see the way I've set this up. If you have two lost teams make the conference championship game and they lose the conference championship game, then do you reward teams that don't play in their conference championship game and sit around because they didn't lose? The prime example of this from last year would have been Louisville. Would an LSU have made the college football playoff and Louisville gotten booted? As LSU sat around and didn't do anything? Would have Notre Dame have made the college football playoff after Louisville loses? What would have happened in those cases? So we'll see. We'll see how this lays out. But right now, it's where I feel, and I'm going to go through and look at individual things like the Heisman and lay this thing out, college football playoff later on in the week. But Ohio State, Utah, I got 3 newcomers. It's just a different world where it's going to be a weird year for adjustments. Seeing these teams play, and it's really going to be interesting when you get to conference championship weekend and you look out and you're like, Utah, Big 12, what? Oregon, Big 10. It's a new world, man. New world. Wanted to wrap with this. The Rays. And, baseball season, the Rays probably not going to make the postseason. Made it 5 straight years. And, the Red Sox having a decent year. The thing is, the Royals, Bobby Witt Jr., he's probably an MVP candidate right up there with Aaron Judge. The Orioles, the pitching staffs on these teams are good. And the Rays hit the reset button. They did. They actually hit it in the offseason when they traded Tyler Glass now. But trading away Eflin, where they are, Rosarina gone, Isaac Paredes gone, and it's been 3 weeks since they had the major trade at the trade deadline, the house clearing, and they've been a 500 baseball team since then. And they've kind of, the fan base hasn't shown up. Why would you? But Junior Caminero, through 5 games, he's hitting .333. He's 6 for 18. Pretty decent defensively. Oh, okay. You get to see the future. And that's what this is, right? It's a jump start on the future. You get a bunch of guys that were at AA that are going to be at AAA that move up. And expect to have 2 or 3 rookies starting for the Rays next year. They're rebuilding. But they got to, rather than clear all this out in the offseason, they got a 40-game head start this year. 45, 50, there's 39 games to go in the year. So they basically, essentially, got themselves a 55-game head start going into next season with some of these guys. See if some guys can cut it. And the Morel, that's a disaster. I know he got a couple hits on Sunday and extra innings. The Rays won, but that's, come on. And look, there's so much talent there in the minor leagues with this Rays organization. Going to build a new stadium. Going to start to line some of these things up. Organizations like this that rebuild, they're doing this the right way. And they could have traded a bunch of young talent and ran for the wild card and make it and lose right away. No, it's a rebuild. And I'm trying to liken it of what it is. It's like, I don't know if I really want this. Do I want this? Fine, I'll eat it, I guess. Do I really want this? What is it? That's what it is to me. To me, the Rays it's a beer that's been in the refrigerator for 15 minutes. It's like, I guess I'll drink it. I'm not head over heels on this. Okay, I guess. Okay. You ever go to a cookout and you look around, you're like, man, all the good stuff's gone. What this race team is the next few weeks of the year, the next month, is you trying to find something to wear for Halloween on the day of Halloween, about 1 o'clock. All the best costumes are gone. You're just going to have to find something, make do with it. Ever sit at a bar and go, what type of beer you have on tap? I don't really like any of those. I got to pick one. Which one do I want? That's what this race season is going to be for the next 45 days. But Junior Caminero hitting 333 his first week up. This dude hits over 300 in these 40 games. Nugget for the future. Harp On Sports, the Bar, podcast, media, audio, radio network. Follow, share, like, subscribe at Harp On Sports Twitter, at Harp On Sports Instagram. Follow us, the auditory route, Buzzsprout, Spotify, Apple Podcast. Harp On Sports, the Bar. Harp On Sports, the Facebook page. And of course, the Bar, Harp On Sports, the YouTube channel, and harponsports.com. Remember, stay clean, stay focused, stay strong. Frankenstein. Have fun with your friends.